Hello, and welcome to Vintage Horror Movies, where we provide commentary, analysis, and criticism of older horror movies. This week we're talking about The Old Dark House. There are two movies, one from 1932 and one from 1963. These movies are part of the Old Dark House genre of horror that was most popular during the 1920s to 1940s. The main elements are a group of people trapped in an isolated mansion, usually during some sort of bad storm. It has gothic elements. And let me just list a couple more examples, some of which we've already covered here. So 1926 is The Bat, which we talked about, I think, 2 weeks ago. 1927's The Cat and the Canary, which I covered last week. This is the prototype for the genre. 1940s The Ghost Breakers, also talked about last week. This was a spin-off of Bob Hope's 1939, The Cat and the Canary, with many of the same plot points. 1959's House on Haunted Hill with Vincent Price. I've covered that previously on my podcast if you want to check it out. And then a few others. 1931's Murder by the Clock. 1944's The Uninvited. 1945's Agatha, based on the Agatha Christie novel, And Then There Were None. 1963's The Haunting. 1976 Murder by Death. And 1985's Clue, which of course was based on the board game, but it's still a lot of fun. So just to briefly go over who is in these movies. Let's see, we have large ensemble casts in both. Now, some of these, because this is an older movie, some of these screenshots, the quality is not great, but you get the gist of who's in there. So, The Old Dark House from 1932 is a pre-Hays Code horror comedy directed by James Whale. The Hays Code went into effect in 1934, so 2 years after this movie. The movie is based on the 1927 novel Benighted by J.B. Priestley, and the cast includes Boris Karloff as a mute butler named Morgan. Let me show you his picture real quick. Most of the publicity, stills, lobby cards, posters included Karloff because he was the most famous, I think, person in the cast at that time. He is, at that point, was known best for playing Frankenstein's monster. We also have Melvyn Douglas as Mr. Pendrell, Gloria Stewart as Margaret Waverton, Charles Lawton as Sir William Porterhouse, Lillian Bond as Gladys, Ernest Thesiger, I hope I said his last name correctly, as Horace Femm, Raymond Massey as Philip Waverton, and Eva Moore as Horace's sister Rebecca Femm. I'll show you one more group shot here of them. Then we have the second movie, The Old Dark House from 1963, directed by William Castle for Columbia Pictures and Hammer Film Productions, so it was a joint production. Starring Tom Boston as Tom Pendrell, Janet Scott as Cicely, Robert Morley as Roderick, Fenella Fielding as Morgana, Peter Bull as Casper and Jasper, and Joyce Grenfell as Agatha. So a large cast there also. Where can you find these movies? The 1963 one is on Tubi, YouTube, or the Internet Archive. I'm sorry, that was the 1932 one. The 1963 one is on the Internet Archive or YouTube. If you search for it on the Internet Archive, just don't search by the year because it won't come up like that. Just search on the name. Rotten Tomato scores. The first movie, critics gave it a 97%, audiences gave it 69%, which is pretty high. The 1963 movie, not rated by critics, audiences gave it a 19%. So you can see they did not like that movie much. The plot, I'm just going to give you the general plot. I don't want to ruin any of the surprises if you're going to watch these. So 1932 movie, the film follows 5 travelers who encounter a bad storm and seek shelter in an old country house. They are trapped there for the night with no way out. They meet the Femm family, who is more than a little eccentric. There's Horace, who we just talked about, his sister Rebecca, the mute butler named Morgan, and several other family members. Then the 1963 movie, a guy who's a car salesman goes to his flatmate, or he's sharing an apartment with this person's ancestral home to deliver a car, and he gets much more than he bargained for. This story is completely different from the earlier one. I think the only similarities are they all live in old dark houses, and the family's name is Femm in both. Now, on to trivia. Obviously, most of this trivia will be about the original movie. Initially, The Old Dark House failed to match the contemporary critical and commercial success of Wells' other films and was withdrawn from circulation after Universal lost the right to Priestley's novel. The 1932 film was thought to be a lost film, but Wells' colleague Curtis Harrington eventually succeeded in recovering most of its original elements, which were restored by the George Eastman House. With the re-evaluation of Wells' filmography, The Old Dark House has garnered widespread critical acclaim and is recognized as both a cult classic and one of the director's most significant works. And of course, his other movies, which are really, really famous, that he did with Universal includes Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein, The Invisible Man, and several others. Wells' work was heavily influenced by German Expressionism and the films of Paul Linney, who we talked about last week when I reviewed The Cat and the Canary. Boris Karloff, of course, is most famous for playing Frankenstein's monster in 1931 and The Mummy in 1932. But did you know that he also voiced the Grinch in the 1966 movie Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas? He won a Grammy Award for that. In total, he did 174 films as well as a number of plays and TV and radio programs. He has 2 stars on Hollywood's Walk of Fame. Charles Laughton's Hollywood career began with The Old Dark House. He plays Sir Porterhouse. And you may not know this, he was married in real life to Elsa Lancaster, who, of course, was the bride of Frankenstein. Ernest Thesiger, Thesiger, I have a very hard time saying his name. His career also began with The Old Dark House. He played Horace Femm. And Gloria Stewart, who played Margaret in the 1932 version, also starred in James Cameron's Titanic from 1977. She is a much older Rose retelling the story of what happened on the ship. And in real life, Gloria lived to be 100 years old and died in 2010. The 1932 cast included, as I said, a number of famous people, including 2 people who had already won Oscars at that point. Melvyn Douglas, Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in 1963's HUD. Well, no, he had not won them yet, but he would go on to win them. 1963's HUD and Best Supporting Actor in 1979's Being There. He was nominated for Best Actor in 1970's I Never Sang for My Father. And Charles Laughton, who won an Oscar for Best Actor in a leading role in 1933's The Private Life of Henry VIII. He was also nominated for Best Actor in 1935's Mutiny on the Bounty, and again in 1957 for Witness for the Prosecution. There are also 2 future Oscar nominees in the group. Raymond Massey, nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor in 1940's Abe Lincoln in Illinois, and Gloria Stewart, nominated for what we just talked about, Best Supporting Actress for 1999's Titanic. She was also nominated for a Golden Globe for that, and she won a Screen Actors Guild Award for that role. Due to a quarrel on set, James Whale refused to work with Boris Karloff again. He replaced him in The Invisible Man that came out in 1933 with Claude Rains. In this movie, Boris Karloff plays Ernest Thesinger's butler, and in The Ghoul, 1933, it's the other way around. A movie poster for the 1932 movie sold in 1991 at Christie's for $48,400, which I think set a record for a movie poster at that time. Charles Addams, his last name has two D's in it, Addams, is obviously the creator of the Addams Family comic strip, which went on to be various movies and TV shows, including Wednesday, which is a lot of fun. He did the title sequence art for the 1963 movie, which of course is several pictures of old dark houses. I'll show you one right now. He said that his career was inspired by the 1932 movie. So I think this is one of the best parts about the later movie. The 1963 movie was directed by William Castle. I love lots of his movies, including The House on Haunted Hill, The Tingler, 13 Ghosts, and others. Tom Poston, who played Tom in this 1963 movie, might be best known for his role as George in The Newhart Show. He won 3 Emmy nominations for that. He was also married to actress Suzanne Pleshette, who was also on that show. Boris Karloff was offered a role in the 1963 movie but turned it down since he didn't like the script. And lastly, in the book, The Hammer Story, The Authorized History of Hammer Films, they called the 1963 movie, quote, one of the strangest pictures Hammer film productions ever made, but, quote, strangely endearing. Let me just show you, let's see, I think I showed you one picture of the cast. Let me just show you 2 more from this. Here's everybody at dinner. And then lastly, this is Tom, Cicely, and Morgana. Morgana, the actress, I'm sure you'll know her because she has a very husky voice. And she's been in lots of other movies. I think that the only actress alive from this group is Cecily Scott. I'm sorry, Janet Scott. Wait, what's her name? Let me look real quick. Janet Scott as Cicely. I think she's the only person currently alive from that cast. Okay, so should you watch these movies? I'd say just watch the 1932 movie, especially if you want to see everything James Whale has done. And it has creepy atmosphere, strange characters, lots of famous actors, and of course, it's an example of the old dark house genre. Um, just don't focus too much on the plot, though. I was disappointed in the plot. I wanted it to be better, but probably for 1932 audiences, it was just fine. I would say skip the 1963 movie. I'm not sure what the point of making it was. It wasn't scary. They focused more on comedy than horror. I was really bored by the movie. That there are very good actors here, but they just don't have anything much to do. So, like the person who wrote the Hammer Story book, I too am confused as to what they were going for with this movie. Okay, sign off. So that's it for this week. Like I said, as always, if you see any of these movies, please let me know in the comments if you enjoyed them or what you thought. Seems like I'm going through lots of movies in the old dark house genre, which I didn't set out to do, but it's just how things are turned out. So we'll see what I end up with next week. Until then, if you're invited to an old dark house, I would say pass. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you later.